In April 2022, Susan Boyle suffered a stroke that nearly destroyed her voice forever. For 3 years, the world wondered if we'd ever hear her sing again. But what happened next will shock you. Remember that moment? A 47-year-old woman walks onto Britain's Got Talent. The audience laughs. The judges smirk. Then she opens her mouth, and in 3 minutes, she becomes the most talked about person on the planet. But here's what nobody tells you about that fairy tale. The dark reality that came after the standing ovation. The breakdown. The family betrayals. The stroke that almost ended everything. Today, you're getting the full story. April 1st, early 1960s. A small hospital in West Lothian, Scotland. Bridget Boyle, 47 years old, is giving birth to her 9th child. The doctors are terrified. They've warned her repeatedly, at her age, this pregnancy could kill her. But Bridget refuses to listen. Her faith won't allow it. The birth is traumatic. Susan isn't getting enough oxygen. When she finally arrives, the doctors deliver devastating news: mild brain damage. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. That diagnosis was completely wrong, and it would haunt Susan for over 40 years. The Boyle family home in Blackburn was already bursting. 9 children, barely any money, and a father who returned from World War II carrying demons no one could see. Patrick Boyle was violent, unstable, and Susan, the youngest, became his target. She never talked about the details publicly, but years later she'd say she loved her father and believed he was fighting battles he couldn't control. That's the kind of forgiveness that reveals just how deep the pain went. Imagine being called Susie Simple every single day. Imagine having epilepsy and fainting in class while your classmates laugh and point. Now imagine the teachers, the adults who should protect you, hitting you with belts, sometimes daily. This was Susan's reality. She was labeled a slow learner. She couldn't keep up in class. But here's what nobody knew. Susan wasn't slow at all. She was actually above average intelligence. She had undiagnosed Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism. But that truth wouldn't surface for decades. By then, the damage was done. Mid-1990s, Susan is in her 20s, and for the first time in her life, she falls in love. There's a man. He calls the house regularly. They're making plans. Then one day, Patrick Boyle answers the phone. He tells the man Susan doesn't want to speak to him anymore. He hangs up. He never tells Susan about the call. The man moves on, has a child with someone else. When Susan finally learns what happened, her heart shatters. She never pursued romance again. That single act of interference changed the entire trajectory of her life. While her 8 siblings moved out, built careers, started families, Susan stayed home. She became the caretaker. First for her father until he died, then for her mother, Bridget. For years and years, until Bridget passed at 91. Susan's world shrunk to the size of that small house in Blackburn. No social life, no dreams of her own, just endless days of cooking, cleaning, and caring. But Bridget never stopped believing in Susan's voice. "You have a gift," she'd say. "You must use it." Those words kept Susan alive. Late 1990s, Susan records Crimea River for a charity CD. Only 1,000 copies made. A local paper calls her voice heartbreaking. But that's it. No one else hears it. She spends her savings on a demo tape, sends it to record labels and TV shows across the country. Crickets. Then tragedy strikes. Susan's sister Kathleen, her biggest supporter, dies suddenly. Susan stops singing for 2 years, completely silent. In 2007, Bridget dies at 91. Susan shuts down again, barely leaves the house for almost 2 full years. Neighbors worry she'll never recover. The curtains stay closed. She talks to no one but her cat, Pebbles. But before she died, Bridget made Susan promise something. One final request. Susan is 47, unemployed, living alone in her childhood home. She's never performed outside her small town, but she made her mother a promise. So she fills out an application for Britain's Got Talent and travels to Glasgow. April 11th, 2009. Clyde Auditorium. Susan walks out in a plain gold lace dress, messy hair, and an awkward shuffle. The cameras catch the audience members laughing, eye-rolling, smirking. When she says she wants to be as famous as Elaine Page, the entire theater erupts in mockery. Simon Cowell exchanges a look with the other judges. You can see it in his face. Here we go again. Another delusional nobody. Then Susan opens her mouth. I dreamed a dream from Les Miserables. 3 seconds in, Simon's eyebrows shoot up. 5 seconds in, Amanda Holden's jaw drops. By the chorus, the entire audience is on their feet, screaming. Amanda says something that echoes around the world. I think we were all being very cynical, and I think that's the biggest wake-up call ever. The viral explosion. By the next morning, the video is everywhere. 1 week, 25 million views. 9 days, 100 million views. CNN, BBC, The New York Times. Everyone's talking about Susan Boyle. Demi Moore tweets about her. Ashton Kutcher. Oprah invites her on the show. People from Japan fly to Scotland just to visit her church. Susan Boyle goes from complete obscurity to global phenomenon in 72 hours. Late May, Susan sings Memory from Cats in the semifinals. She dominates. Gets more votes than anyone. By the finals, everyone assumes she'll win. The betting odds are overwhelmingly in her favor. Her audition video has hit 200 million views. But when the votes are counted, she loses. The dance group Diversity wins. Susan comes in second. She congratulates them graciously on live TV. The best people won, she says with a smile. But backstage, something snaps. Reports flood in. Susan running down hallways screaming, I hate this show. Throwing water on people. Yelling at hotel staff. Days later, the news breaks. Susan has been hospitalized at a private London clinic, the kind where royals and A-listers go. She's had a complete emotional breakdown. Crying, fainting, shouting at producers. Paramedics had to intervene. The media goes into a frenzy. The Prime Minister sends well wishes. Tabloids spin wild rumors about her mental health. One reporter even pretends to propose marriage to get story. Simon Cowell later admits, it was one of the hardest weeks of my life. We went too far. For the first time ever, he tells Susan she doesn't have to do the tour. The miracle recovery. 3 days later, Susan shocks everyone. She's leaving the clinic, and she's joining the tour. She performs at 20 out of 24 shows. Standing ovations in every city. November 2009. I Dreamed a Dream drops. UK, 400,000 copies in 1 week. Breaks Leona Lewis's record. US, 700,000 copies in 1 week. The biggest debut by a female solo artist since they started tracking sales in 1991. Worldwide, 2 million copies in week 1. By year's end, 10 million albums sold. She outsells Eminem, Rihanna, and Lady Gaga. Amazon reports it's the most pre-ordered album in their history. But here's what makes this even more remarkable. Susan had zero industry connections. No vocal coach. No image consultant. No record label grooming her for years. She was a 48-year-old woman from a tiny Scottish village who had never performed outside her community. And she was beating artists with multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns and decades of industry experience. Music executives were baffled. This wasn't supposed to happen. The industry had rules, and Susan was breaking every single one of them. Over the next 2 years, Susan becomes the first woman in UK history to have 3 consecutive #1 debuts. I Dreamed a Dream, The Gift, and Someone to Watch Over Me. Only the Beatles and the Rolling Stones had done that before. Her album, The Gift, achieved something nobody thought possible. It hit #1 in both the UK and US simultaneously. She was the first woman ever to accomplish this feat. By 2021, 25 million albums sold worldwide. Over $40 million net worth. Her debut album alone went 4 times platinum in the US and 7 times platinum in the UK. Multi-platinum certifications followed in Australia, Japan, and New Zealand. She performs for Queen Elizabeth II at Windsor Castle, singing Mull of Kintyre, alongside the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards. Susan Boyle is a national treasure, but money tears families apart. Reports emerge. Susan's brother threatens self-harm unless she gives him $50,000 for his failing business. She's sick with a virus and throat infection at the time, but she pays. He later denies it was blackmail, but the trust is shattered. Susan makes it worse by lying to other family members about what happened. She gives another relative a large cash gift. When they don't say thank you, Susan sends angry messages. The police get involved. They tell her to stop contacting them. Over the years, Susan gives her family nearly $2 million. Instead of bringing them closer, it pushes them apart. Type 2 diabetes diagnosis. Doctors warn, change your habits or risk losing your voice. She drops 50 pounds. Then COVID hits. At her age, with her health conditions, a simple infection could be fatal. She isolates completely. But during the pandemic, something beautiful happens. At 53, Susan finds love. She meets a doctor in Florida during a U.S. tour. He doesn't know much about her music, but he recognizes her. They start talking. Something clicks. April 2022. Susan suffers a stroke. It nearly destroys her voice. Her speech is slurred. The left side of her body weakens. For someone whose entire identity is built on singing, this is a death sentence. She disappears from public life. No social media. No performances. Nothing. People assume it's over. The 3-year fight. But Susan doesn't quit. Every single day for 3 years, she trains. Speech therapy, voice exercises, physical workouts to rebuild strength. The doctors tell her it might never come back, that she should prepare for the possibility that her singing career is over. That at 61, after a major stroke, recovery odds are slim. Susan refuses to accept it. She works with speech therapists 5 days a week. She practices vocal scales that sound broken and painful at first. She does physical therapy to regain coordination on her left side. Her team shares videos of the early days. Susan struggling to hit notes she once sang effortlessly. Her frustration visible. Her determination even more so. There are setbacks. Days where her voice cracks and fails. Moments where she breaks down crying, wondering if this is the end. But she keeps going. Over 1,000 hours of grueling work. By early 2025, she's recovered 90% of her voice. Doctors call it a miracle. But Susan knows the truth. It wasn't a miracle. It was 3 years of refusing to give up. 3 years of showing up every single day, even when progress seemed impossible. Susan returns to Britain's Got Talent. She walks onto that same stage where everything began. She sings, "I Dreamed a Dream" again. The audience rises as one. People are crying. Simon Cowell, the man who's seen everything, calls it the most moving performance I've ever witnessed. On her 64th birthday, Susan breaks 2 years of social media silence. She posts, "I'm back. Definitely back. Thank you for waiting. New music, new dreams, new beginnings." 500,000 likes. 50,000 comments. She announces a documentary. A charity single. Live performances. She shares videos of her recovery. Her first singing exercises. Joyful moments with her team. The response is overwhelming. Fans from every corner of the globe flood her comments with love and support. Messages in dozens of languages. People sharing how her story inspired them through their own struggles. One comment reads, "You taught me that it's never too late." Another, "You showed my daughter that being different is beautiful." Susan's story has always been bigger than music. It's about resilience, about refusing to let the world define you, about proving that the experts can be wrong and that dreams don't expire. Her upcoming documentary promises to show everything: the stroke, the recovery, the darkest moments, and the triumphant return. Early reports suggest it will be raw, honest, and deeply moving. The legacy. Susan Boyle never moved out of her childhood home. She bought it for $65,000 and later bought the house next door for $100,000 more. She still does her own shopping, still lives simply. After earning over $20 million, she spends a few $100s a week on herself. She's proof that you don't need to be young, polished, or connected to change the world. She's proof that talent doesn't have an expiration date. She's proof that the comeback is always stronger than the setback. So where is Susan Boyle now? She's not just surviving, she's thriving. At 64, after a stroke that should have ended everything, she's preparing for her next chapter. New music, New performances. The same unforgettable voice. Susan Boyle didn't just dream a dream. She lived it, lost it, and fought like hell to get it back. And that's a story worth celebrating.